The evening Judith arrived, the air in Claire Thompson's kitchen felt unusually still. The faint scent of lemon cleaner lingered above the polished counters. Claire had rearranged everything: fresh sheets on the guest bed, flowers in a crystal vase, and a new mug on the counter with "Welcome" in cursive gold. She had done it partly for politeness and partly for her husband, Mark, who had lost his father 6 months earlier. "Just until she sorts things out," Mark had said, rubbing his temple after another tense call with Judith. "You know how big that house is now, all alone. It's only for a little while." Claire had nodded, trying to sound agreeable. "Of course, Mark. She's family." When Judith stepped in, wrapped in a pale wool coat, her eyes darted instantly to the kitchen shelves. "You moved the spice rack," she said. "No hello, no thank you." "Just that." Claire smiled anyway. "We renovated last year. It's more functional this way." Judith murmured, setting her suitcase down. "Functional. I remember when homes used to feel warm. That first week was manageable." Judith kept mostly to herself, though she replaced the family's dinnerware for safety reasons, and insisted on cooking. "I just can't watch my son eat that frozen nonsense," she would say, lifting Claire's neatly labeled meal prep containers and sliding her own pots onto the stove. Claire didn't argue, not yet. But she noticed how Judith's help began spreading. Switching the thermostat, relabeling pantry jars, whispering to Claire's teenage daughter, Lily, about how a real lady always sets the table with linen napkins. One afternoon, Claire returned from work to find Judith perched at the kitchen island, sipping tea from Claire's favorite chipped mug. A small relic from college. The older woman's eyes narrowed at Claire's keys clinking into the bowl. "I've been thinking," Judith said. "You work so much. It must be exhausting for Mark." "I like my job," Claire replied, hanging her coat. "We both work hard. That's our balance." Judith smiled thinly. "A wife's balance is her husband's peace, dear." It was such a gentle cruelty, spoken like advice, that Claire felt her breath catch. She forced a polite laugh. "And peace comes in many forms, Judith." That night, Claire confided in Mark. "Your mom's making comments. About my work. About how I run the house." He sighed, scrolling through his phone. "She's old-fashioned. Don't take it personally. She's grieving, Claire." "Grief doesn't excuse disrespect," she said softly. Mark kissed her forehead distractedly. "Just be patient, okay? She'll settle in." By the third week, Judith had started hosting afternoon teas for neighbors using Claire's china. Claire returned one day to find 4 women in floral dresses gossiping around her dining table. Judith waved a hand as if introducing staff. "This is Claire. She's terribly busy with work, but we manage, don't we?" The women smiled politely, but one of them whispered as Claire walked to the sink. "Such a shame, always away." Later, Claire found her personal recipe binder open on the counter, sticky notes in Judith's looping cursive. "Too much salt. Avoid store-bought stock." It was invasive, infuriating, and strangely precise. Claire began documenting things quietly. Photos of her rearranged cabinets. A voice memo of Judith insisting Lily call her mum as a joke. Nothing dramatic, just evidence of the shifting lines. Then came the night of Mark's birthday dinner, the night that would change everything. Judith had insisted on hosting. Claire agreed, trying to be graceful. When guests arrived, Mark's colleagues, some family friends, Judith glowed with hostess pride. She'd moved the seating plan, placing herself at the head of the table. When Claire approached with a tray of drinks, Judith raised her voice. "Careful, dear. You're spilling. We wouldn't want another incident like last week, would we?" The room stilled. "What incident?" someone asked. Judith's eyes flicked with mock sympathy. "Oh, just a little wine accident. Stained Mark's favorite shirt. These modern detergents just don't work." Laughter rippled, light but cruel. Claire's cheeks burned. She hadn't spilled a drop last week. Judith had accidentally brushed the glass herself. But now everyone was looking at Claire as if she were clumsy, inattentive. She smiled tightly, placed the drinks down, and sat beside Lily, who looked at her mother with quiet confusion. After dessert, when Judith proposed a toast, she stood dramatically. "To family," she began. "To resilience. And to the women who hold us together, even when they forget how to serve properly." There was laughter again, smaller, uncertain. Mark half smiled, half cringed. Claire felt something solidify inside her. Not anger, resolve. When everyone left, she cleared the plates in silence. Judith hummed softly behind her, almost triumphant. Mark started. Honey, Mom didn't mean. She meant every word, Claire interrupted. And from now on, Mark, I'm documenting everything. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means if she wants to act like this house is hers, Claire said, rinsing the final plate. She can explain that to the homeowners association, since her name isn't on the deed. Judith paused mid-step. What did you say? Claire turned, towel in hand. Just noting facts, Judith. You seem to appreciate order. That night, while the rest slept, Claire sat at the kitchen island, laptop open, calendar tabs blinking. She began a timeline, not of insults but of evidence. Not vengeance but preparation. Outside, wind rattled the maple leaves. Inside, the chipped mug sat drying by the sink, a silent witness to the first true fracture in their home. The morning after the birthday dinner, the kitchen looked untouched, but Claire felt every surface humming with memory. Judith had already been up for hours. The faint smell of coffee greeted Claire as she entered. I've taken care of breakfast, Judith said brightly, plating pancakes with a precision that felt rehearsed. You and Mark can relax today. Claire's stomach tightened. Thanks, she replied, forcing warmth. But I usually make Lily's lunch. Judith smiled without turning around. Already done. A growing girl needs a proper meal. Nothing from those pre-packed boxes you buy. Claire bit her tongue. Lily came down, backpack slung over one shoulder. Grandma made grilled chicken wraps, she said. They smell amazing. Great, Claire said quietly. But when she opened the fridge later, she noticed her own labeled containers gone. Her meal plan for the week replaced by Judith's glass dishes, neatly stacked. It wasn't just food. The coat hooks had been shifted lower. The family calendar had been rewritten in Judith's careful pen, replacing Claire's initials with tidy symbols. When Claire asked about it, Judith chuckled. Oh, sweetie, I just made it easier to read. That evening, Mark didn't see the problem. You're both just different personalities, he said. Mom's always been particular. Claire's voice stayed even. Particular is fine. But she's editing my life. Mark sighed. Can we not start again tonight? Please. I just want one peaceful meal. Claire started her own form of quiet defense. She placed a small camera, the kind meant for pet monitoring, on the bookshelf near the kitchen. It blended into the decor, its light turned off. She wasn't trying to spy, she told herself, just to confirm what she already suspected. That Judith was staging mistakes to make Claire seem careless. 2 days later, the footage confirmed it. Judith accidentally knocked over a vase of flowers, then called Mark to the room before Claire returned. Look what happened, she said into the phone camera, shaking her head. Poor Claire, so distracted lately. Mark's voice was audible through the speaker. I'll talk to her. Claire watched it twice, her jaw tight, her pulse steady. She saved the clip, labeling it simply one a vase. The chipped mug appeared again that evening, now at Judith's bedside table. When Claire asked for it, Judith smiled faintly. Oh, that old thing? I thought it looked nice up here. It's sentimental, Claire said. Everything's sentimental to you, Judith murmured. That's why you can't see clearly. It was a strange sentence, one that lingered. At work, Claire confided in her friend and coworker Jordan, over lunch. She's trying to rewrite my role, Claire said. Not just at home. She's playing to Mark's guilt. Jordan frowned. Is Mark on the deed? Both of us. We refinanced 2 years ago after I got promoted. Then you've got leverage, Jordan said. If she's manipulating things, you document and hold your line. Paper trail beats gossip every time. That phrase stayed with Claire. She began keeping a binder, dates, texts, receipts, even the altered grocery lists Judith left on the counter. It felt methodical, almost therapeutic. But Judith escalated. She started visiting Mark's office during his lunch hour, bringing homemade pie. Just checking in on my boy, she'd say. Claire only found out when a colleague's spouse mentioned it casually at a barbecue. Your mother-in-law's adorable. She brought the whole office cookies. Claire's smile froze. Adorable, she repeated. Yes, that's one word. That night, when Mark came home, Claire asked calmly, How was lunch with your mom? He blinked. How did you know? Someone mentioned it. She's visiting you now. Mark hesitated. It's harmless. She's being nice. She's drawing a map, Claire said, of everyone she can win over. Mark didn't answer. The next day, Claire came home to find Lily crying in her room. She told me you used to forget to pick me up from school, Lily said between sobs. She said that's why she moved in, to keep things stable. Claire's chest ached. That's not true, sweetheart. She showed me a note, Lily whispered. Said it was from school. About you being late once. Claire's mind flashed through years of emails, reminders, calendars. Every time she'd left work early to make it on time. One time, 3 years ago, traffic had delayed her 10 minutes. Could Judith have found that old notice? Claire kissed Lily's forehead. You did nothing wrong, okay? And Grandma loves you, but sometimes grown-ups mix up stories. Lily sniffled. She said Dad knows. Claire's throat tightened. She went to the living room, where Judith sat cross-legged on the rug, sorting mail. Did you tell Lily I used to neglect her? Judith looked up innocently. I simply told her everyone makes mistakes. You shouldn't be so sensitive, dear. Don't talk to my daughter about my parenting again, Claire said quietly. Judith's tone turned icy. Our daughter, Claire. She carries my son's blood, doesn't she? It was the first open declaration of territory, and Claire realized then Judith didn't just want space. She wanted ownership. That night, Claire sent an email to the family's attorney about a potential tenancy clarification. She didn't mention Judith by name, just inquired about a temporary guest overstaying. But the true shift came one rainy Saturday, when Mark announced he wanted to take his mother to the lake house for a weekend to relax. Claire agreed, until she saw Judith packing not just a weekend bag, but several of Mark's old financial folders. What are those? Claire asked. Oh, just papers from the basement, Judith said lightly. Mark's father's estate. I need to check something. Claire's eyes flicked to the embossed label. Household Deeds and Mortgage 2015 to 2021. She forced a smile. Mind if I scan them first? I'm sorting files for taxes. Judith hesitated. No need, dear. Then you won't mind, Claire said, already pulling out her phone camera. Judith turned sharply. I said no need. That was the moment Claire saw it. The faint tremor in Judith's hand, the panic. She snapped 2 photos anyway. Later, while Mark loaded the car, Claire checked the pictures. The tabs were labeled Transfer Options and Joint Residency Agreement. Something about that wording chilled her. She didn't know it yet, but Judith had been quietly preparing a claim, one that, if unchallenged, could give her partial legal occupancy of their home. The lake house trip bought Claire 2 days of quiet. For the first time in weeks, she could hear her own thoughts without Judith's running commentary. The house felt larger, airier, her own again. But that piece made the questions louder. What was in those folders labeled Transfer Options and Joint Residency Agreement? Why would Judith, who'd moved in temporarily, need access to them? Claire sat at the kitchen island late into the night, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. She logged into their joint mortgage portal and began reading. Every refinance, every insurance statement, carefully scanned, properly signed. Except one. An upload date caught her eye 3 months ago. A file titled Residency Clause Addendum, Draft. Her heart thudded as she opened it. It was a half-complete form addressed to Trenton County Records Office. It referenced extended household occupancy and secondary caretaker rights, with placeholders for signatures. The disturbing part was the witness line, filled in neatly with J. Turner, Notary Public. Claire didn't remember signing anything like that. She checked the digital timestamp, uploaded by Mark's email. Her stomach twisted. Mark never handled paperwork. He relied entirely on her for anything administrative. If his account had been used, it wasn't by him. Someone had access, someone inside the house. When Mark returned Sunday night, sunburned and tired, Claire tried to sound casual. Did Mom mention anything about the mortgage files? He hesitated. She said she wanted to check if Dad's old estate tax forms were missing. Why? Because there's a draft addendum uploaded under your name. She kept her tone measured. About household occupancy. He frowned. What? I didn't upload anything. She must have used your email. That's impossible. She doesn't even. Mark, she's been in your office more than I have. He rubbed his jaw uneasy. Claire, she wouldn't. She doesn't understand digital forms. You're jumping to conclusions. She handed him her tablet. Then explain this signature line. Mark scrolled. His brow furrowed. That's not my writing. Exactly. Then it's a forgery. Claire exhaled slowly. And forgery's a crime, Mark. He ran his hands through his hair. I'll talk to her tomorrow. Don't, Claire said quickly. Not yet. Let her think we don't know. The next morning, while Mark was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the counter. The preview read, Judith. We may need to finalize that notary visit sooner, before she changes her mind. Claire's hands shook. She snapped a picture of the message and put the phone back exactly as it was. When Mark left for work, she grabbed her car keys. The address listed under J. Turner, Notary Public, led her to a small insurance office near downtown. A brass sign above the door gleamed faintly in the sunlight. Inside, a man in his 60s looked up from behind a desk. Can I help you? He asked. Are you Mr. Turner? Claire said. I think your notary stamp might have been used on a document without authorization. His brow creased. What's the name? Judith Thompson. He paused. Oh yes, she came in with her son. Said it was a family caretaker arrangement. I just witnessed a signature. Claire's pulse quickened. Her son signed. I assumed he did. They presented ID, but she handled most of the talking. Mentioned her daughter-in-law was too busy to be present. Was the daughter-in-law's name Claire? He nodded faintly. That's right. You. Claire smiled tightly. Yes. He looked uneasy. I keep logs of every notarized draft. Let me check. When he returned, he handed her a photocopy. Her name was there, typed neatly under a line marked Occupant 2, Consent Assumed. The signature line was blank, but the notary's stamp gleamed below it, already affixed. Claire took a slow breath. Mr. Turner, would you be willing to give a written statement that this signature was never made in your presence? He hesitated. If something illegal's happened, I'd rather set the record straight. She handed him her card. Then please call me tonight. This might protect my family. Driving home, Claire rehearsed how she'd tell Mark. He wouldn't want to believe it. But now she had a timestamp, a copy, and soon an affidavit. When she opened the front door, Judith was at the kitchen table, knitting, as if nothing existed beyond her soft, polite hum. How was your morning, dear? She asked. Productive, Claire said, setting down her bag. Judith's eyes flicked up. Good. We all need purpose. Claire caught a faint whiff of printer ink, the home office again. She walked in, pretending to check the thermostat. The desk drawer was ajar. Inside sat a stack of copied IDs, hers, Mark's, and Lily's, photographed and printed. She shut the drawer quietly and stepped back. Judith's voice floated from the next room. I found those old insurance forms, by the way. You're welcome. Claire didn't answer. That night, after everyone was asleep, she scanned the copied IDs and the notary draft into a locked folder labeled Garden Project Estimates. A decoy name. She added her new evidence sheet. One of Ace video. 2B. Text message. Before she changes her mind. 3C. Notary document, unsigned copy. 3D. ID copies, unauthorized possession. It was building into something undeniable. 2 days later, her phone buzzed. Mr. Turner had emailed a scanned statement. I confirmed that no person named Claire Thompson was present during notarization of said draft. The signature field was blank at the time my seal was applied, which violates notarial procedure. I regret the oversight. Claire printed it, slid it into a sleeve, and placed it in her binder. At dinner, Judith's tone was honeyed. Mark, dear, have you thought more about that home adjustment form? It's for everyone's security. What form? Claire asked, voice calm. Judith smiled, unfazed. The one for shared household rights. Just in case anything happens. I wouldn't want Lily uprooted if you two travel. Claire set down her fork. So you're planning for our absence? Judith's eyes glinted. Responsible families do, dear. Responsible families also don't forge documents. Mark froze. Claire. I went to the notary, she continued evenly. He remembers you, Judith. And he gave me your little draft. The color drained from Judith's face. You went behind our backs? I went behind your plan, Claire said. Big difference. Lily's fork clattered. Mom. Claire turned to her daughter, voice steady. Everything's fine, sweetheart. Grandma's just been confused about what's hers. Mark stood abruptly. That's enough. No, Claire said, rising. It isn't. She looked straight at Judith. If you ever submit a single form about this house again, I'll have my lawyer file a fraud report. Judith's lips trembled, but she managed. You wouldn't dare. I already have the affidavit, Claire said. The table went silent except for the slow tick of the dining room clock. Later that night, Mark tried to reason with her. She's old, Claire. She doesn't know what she's doing. She knew enough to fake your signature. He rubbed his eyes. What do you want me to do? Throw her out? Claire hesitated, then shook her head. Not yet. Let her think she's one. I want to know who told her about those deed clauses. What do you mean? She couldn't have found that file alone, Claire said. Someone helped her draft it. Someone in the system. 2 days after the confrontation at dinner, Judith shifted her strategy. The snide remarks stopped. Her voice softened. She even baked banana bread, left slices in neat foil packs on the counter. Peace offering, she said, smiling thinly. We both want harmony for Mark and Lily. Claire accepted a piece, knowing it was symbolic, Judith's way of saying I'll play nice while I regroup. At first Mark seemed relieved. See, he said one evening when Judith offered to do the dishes. She's trying. Claire only hummed. She knew Judith's quiet phases always preceded something deliberate. Her proof arrived 3 days later. While clearing mail from the kitchen table, Claire noticed an envelope addressed to Homeowners Association attention. Mrs. F. Delaney. Judith had already sealed it, but the corner was faintly damp from tea, just enough that the flap came loose when Claire brushed it. Inside was a typed note. Dear Mrs. Delaney, I hope this finds you well. I'd like clarification on whether long-term residents such as myself may be added to the property registry for emergency contact purposes. My daughter-in-law Claire has been overwhelmed lately, and it may help to have another adult of record. Warmly, Judith Thompson. Claire read it twice, pulse tightening. The phrasing was polite, non-threatening, but the implication was there. Judith was positioning herself legally as a resident of record, a foothold in property documentation that could later be twisted. Claire resealed the letter carefully and photographed it before Judith returned. That night, she called the HOA office, asking to speak to Mrs. Delaney. The woman's voice was brisk but kind. Yes, we received something from a Judith Thompson. Wants to be listed as co-resident. We haven't processed it. These things need homeowner signatures. Claire exhaled. Please don't process anything unless it's signed by both Mark and me. I'll send a written instruction tomorrow. Of course, Mrs. Thompson, Mrs. Delaney said. We've seen this before. Family overlap can get tricky. Has Judith done this before? A pause. Not here. But her name does ring a bell from my old neighborhood in Parma. She tried to have her name added to her late husband's rental property after the deed was transferred to her son. It was messy. That was the first time someone outside the house hinted Judith had done this before. Claire's curiosity flared. After Lily went to bed, she searched the county records site. There it was. A property in Parma registered under Mark Thompson Sr., marked as transferred in 2017. The notes listed a brief court action for temporary cohabitation rights requested by secondary claimant, denied. The claimant? Judith M. Thompson. Claire stared at the screen, then whispered to herself. So this is round 2. She scrolled through more details and spotted a witness affidavit, filed by a neighbor named Margaret Quinn. The name stuck. Claire found her phone number online. Still listed, still in Ohio. She hesitated, then dialed. Hello. An elderly voice answered. Mrs. Quinn? My name's Claire Thompson. You don't know me, but I believe you once gave a statement involving Judith Thompson. She was your neighbor in Parma? Silence, then a sigh. Oh, her. Claire's pulse leapt. Yes. Her. What's she done now? Claire explained carefully about Judith moving in the forged document, the attempt to get listed with the HOA. Margaret listened quietly, then said, "She's doing the same thing she did here, dear. She moved in with her son after her husband died, started changing the mail addresses, even rerouted the property tax notices to herself. When the son's wife objected, Judith filed a complaint claiming she was being evicted from her rightful home. Took months to sort out. Did she win? Not legally. But the marriage didn't survive. The wife moved out before the hearing. That's Judith's real aim, divide and isolate." Claire's hand tightened around the phone. "That won't happen this time." Margaret's tone softened. "Then you'd better gather witnesses early. People forget quickly, but paper remembers." The next morning, Claire called Jordan from work. "You still know that county clerk in Parma?" Jordan laughed. "I do. Why?" "I need certified copies of an old occupancy case involving Judith Thompson, 2017. The file number 17C2846. Jordan whistled. "You're not playing around." "Not anymore." By afternoon, the scans arrived in Claire's inbox. A full deposition with Judith's handwriting, statements about being promised shared rights, and ensuring continuity for my family. It was almost word-for-word identical to the notary draft she tried to push through this time. Claire printed every page, highlighting passages that mirrored the new attempt. Her binder thickened. That night she brought it to Mark. He skimmed the pages, frowning deeper each line. "I had no idea. She's rehearsed this before, Mark. It's not grief, it's a pattern." He rubbed his temples. "You don't know what she was going through then. Don't you see? She's doing it again. With us." Mark leaned back, eyes tired. "So what do you want me to do?" "Just look at the dates. She started that claim 3 months after moving in with your brother. She's been here 3 months, Mark." He swallowed hard. "Please," Claire said quietly. "I'm not asking you to choose sides. I'm asking you to see facts." The next morning, Judith acted as though nothing had changed. She hummed while folding laundry, complimented Claire's blouse, even made Lily's lunch with a small note. "Love you, Grandma." But her calm was too deliberate, her voice too measured. Claire knew she was regrouping. That evening, while Mark and Lily watched TV, Claire noticed the brass key on the hallway table, the one from their storage shed. She hadn't touched it in weeks. Judith must have taken it from the hook. She slipped on a jacket and quietly stepped outside. The night air was cool and damp. The shed stood at the end of the garden, half lit by the motion sensor. When she unlocked the door, she froze. Inside were boxes, labeled not in her handwriting but Judith's. Each marked neatly, documents, bank records, medical files. Claire pulled one open. Inside were old statements from Mark's father's accounts, mixed with recent printouts from their joint utilities and mortgage bills. It was an archive of evidence, selectively gathered, enough to suggest that Judith was the true manager of the household. Claire's pulse thundered. She took photos of everything, each box, each label, and locked the door again. From the kitchen window, Judith's silhouette watched her return, still and silent, as though she'd been waiting. The next day, Margaret Quinn called back. "I've been thinking," she said. "Judith once told me she had a friend in the records office, someone who helped her fill out forms. Maybe that's how she keeps finding these legal loopholes." "Do you remember a name?" Claire asked. "Something like Faye or Faith. Short blonde woman. Notary training, I think." Claire's mind flashed to the HO envelope. "Attention, Mrs. F. Delaney." No, couldn't be coincidence. Claire arrived home from work on Thursday to find a cream-colored envelope resting on the entry table. Her name wasn't on it, Mark's was. The return address read Trenton Meadows Homeowners Association. Her chest tightened. She opened it anyway. Inside was a polite notice. A special hearing regarding household residency updates for 14 Oakbridge Lane is scheduled for next Tuesday. 6 p.m. Attendance encouraged. No context, no details. Just that. When Mark came home, she held up the letter. "What is this?" He frowned. "Mom said something about a meeting. I thought it was just routine." "Routine," Claire repeated, her voice controlled but sharp. "It's a hearing about our house. She told me the HOA wanted to verify emergency contacts. It didn't sound serious." "She set this up," Claire said, "without telling me." Mark looked genuinely uneasy. "Maybe it's a misunderstanding." "Maybe," she said quietly. But misunderstandings don't get printed on HOA letterhead. That night, Claire sent an email to Mrs. Delaney requesting clarification. The reply came the next morning. Dear Mrs. Thompson, as per your mother-in-law's request, we'll be reviewing her petition to be added as a co-resident for administrative purposes. It's a public meeting. Attendance optional but recommended for affected homeowners. Regards, Faye Delaney, Chairperson. Faye. The name chilled her. Margaret Quinn's warning echoed in her head, Judith's friend in the records office. So this was the connection. Claire called Jordan immediately. It's worse than I thought. The HOA chair is in on it, or at least she's helping Judith present it as legitimate. Jordan's tone hardened. You've got evidence of collusion? Not yet, but I've got pattern, motive, and timing. Enough to make them nervous. Then you need to get ahead of it, Jordan said. If that hearing goes public before you counterfile, they'll claim consent by silence. That night, after Lily went to bed, Claire went through every file she had. The notary affidavit, the HOA letter, the text messages. She laid them out across the table like puzzle pieces. Judith entered quietly, arms crossed. Burning the midnight oil, dear? Preparing for next week, Claire said, not looking up. For what? The hearing. Judith's tone turned falsely sweet. Oh, you don't need to come to that. It's just paperwork. Claire finally looked up. Paperwork you filed about my home. Judith smiled faintly. Our home, darling. I live here too. Temporarily, Claire said. We'll let the association decide that. Claire's hands went still. So that's your endgame, public legitimacy. If they record you as a resident, you can claim rights later. Judith tilted her head. You always were perceptive. Shame it took you this long. Over the next few days, Claire began building her case with precision. She contacted Mrs. Delaney's deputy clerk, a man named Ethan Lewis, under the guise of clarifying HOA procedures. He was young, helpful, and perhaps too candid. Honestly, this whole thing's odd, he said over the phone. Mrs. Delaney normally requires dual signatures for household changes, but this one got scheduled directly through her. Was Judith Thompson present when the request was filed? Claire asked. Yes, along with Mrs. Delaney herself. They go way back, I think. She even brought her banana bread to the office. Claire smiled grimly. Of course she did. Ethan hesitated. Look, off the record, if you've got concerns, the HOA allows counterstatements. If you submit documentation before the hearing, it has to be read into the minutes. Perfect, Claire said. Where do I send it? That weekend, while Judith and Mark went grocery shopping, Claire printed her full dossier, notarized affidavit, the previous Parma case, photographs of Judith's evidence boxes, and the unsubmitted HOA letter she'd intercepted. She stapled it neatly with a short cover note. To the Trenton Meadows HOA Board. Please note that the attached materials document an ongoing pattern of misrepresentation by Judith Thompson, a temporary guest at 14 Oakbridge Lane. No homeowner consent has been given for her residency registration. Respectfully, Claire Thompson. She drove straight to the community office and handed it to Ethan in person. He flipped through the pages, eyebrows rising. This is substantial. I'd like acknowledgement of receipt, Claire said. He signed a slip, handed it back, and whispered, You didn't get this from me, but Mrs. Delaney's already drafted the minutes for that meeting. It names your mother-in-law as a supporting caretaker applicant. She's expecting no opposition. Claire's jaw set. Then she's in for a surprise. Tuesday evening arrived with gray skies and drizzle. The HOA hall smelled faintly of old carpet and lemon cleaner. A dozen neighbors sat scattered across folding chairs. Judith was near the front, pearl earrings gleaming, a folder of papers on her lap. When Claire entered, whispers began. Mark trailed behind, visibly uncomfortable. Mrs. Delaney, short, blonde, professionally composed, smiled from the dais. Welcome, everyone. Let's begin with item 4. Household registry adjustments for 14 Oakbridge Lane. Judith stood, all gracious confidence. Thank you, Faye. As most of you know, I moved in with my son and his family after my husband's passing. For the sake of safety and community record-keeping, I'd like to be formally recognized as a co-resident. A few nods from sympathetic neighbors. Mrs. Delaney smiled. Very reasonable. Claire raised her hand. Point of clarification, please. Mrs. Delaney blinked. Yes, Mrs. Thompson. Did the board receive my counterstatement? The woman's expression faltered. Perhaps we can address that after. No, Claire said, voice calm but carrying. It's directly relevant. She stepped forward, holding up her folder. I have documented proof that this request is fraudulent, including an earlier case from Parma, where Mrs. Thompson attempted the same maneuver. Murmurs rippled through the room. Judith stiffened. You're embarrassing yourself. No, Claire said. I'm protecting my home. Mrs. Delaney cleared her throat. If this is true, we'll need to. It's true, Claire said, handing Ethan the affidavit. This notary statement confirms her last document included a forged signature. And here, she continued, opening another page, is a record from your own deputy confirming the pre-written minutes labeling her as a caretaker before any hearing took place. Gasps around the room. Ethan flushed, nodding awkwardly. That's accurate. Judith's voice quavered. How dare you? How dare you, Claire cut in. You tried to weaponize bureaucracy and friendship to rewrite ownership. You turned grief into leverage. Mrs. Delaney looked cornered. We'll have to review these documents. You'll also have to recuse yourself, Claire said evenly, given your prior personal relationship with the applicant. The silence that followed was almost sacred. Even Mark looked shaken. Mrs. Delaney exhaled slowly. This hearing is suspended pending legal verification. Claire nodded, collected her folder, and turned to Judith. I told you paper remembers. Outside, rain fell softly on the parking lot. Mark caught up to her, breath visible in the cold. I didn't know about any of that. I believe you, Claire said. What happens now? Now, she said, unlocking the car. We see what she does when the curtain drops. Through the windshield, Judith stood under the awning, drenched but rigid, her pearl earrings catching the light. For the first time, she looked small, not defeated yet, but shrinking inside her own performance. For 2 days after the suspended HOA hearing, the Thompson household moved like a clock with a broken spring. Still ticking but out of rhythm. Judith rarely left her room. The television murmured softly behind her door, always tuned to daytime talk shows. Mark tiptoed between guilt and relief, making excuses for his mother's mood swings. Lily sensed the tension but kept silent, her teenage instincts tuned to every sharp pause and lowered voice. Claire, meanwhile, began to prepare for the next strike. She didn't believe for a second that Judith would give up. Women like her never surrendered, they adapted. On Friday morning, the scent of banana bread filled the kitchen again. Judith emerged in a lavender cardigan, holding a plate. Peace offering, take 2, she said. Claire eyed it warily. You really don't have to. I insist. Judith smiled. Family shouldn't stay divided over paperwork. Claire nodded, taking the slice but not eating it. You're right. Families should be honest with each other. Judith's eyes flickered. Honesty is subjective. Not in contracts, it isn't. That faint tremor returned in Judith's hands. Then she smiled and turned away, humming. An hour later, while tidying, Claire noticed something odd. The banana bread wrapper, the parchment paper, was printed faintly on the underside. A draft watermark like it had been reused from an old document. She lifted it up to the light. The words were faint, reversed but legible. Legal addendum. Witness copy, HOA approval required. Her pulse kicked. She peeled another layer from the loaf and found more of the same faint text. Someone had baked with paper that once wrapped official forms. Judith hadn't just been recycling. She'd been hiding prints. Claire rinsed her hands, retrieved the paper, and held it flat under the desk lamp. The reverse imprint revealed a signature line labeled F. Delaney, witness. And below it, resident consent confirmed. The date was last week, before the hearing had been suspended. So Delaney had continued pushing the paperwork even after promising to pause proceedings. Claire's chest tightened. She photographed everything, labeling the file 6A. Baking evidence. Imprint. She called Jordan immediately. Tell me you're sitting down, Claire said. Why? Because I think the HOA chair tried to finalize the registration anyway, using backdated forms, and I found proof in banana bread. Jordan exhaled a low whistle. That's creative even for her. She's laundering documents through domestic routine. If I hadn't looked, I'd have thrown it out. Then you've got to escalate. Take it to the county compliance board. HOA filings are technically public record. They'll eat this up. That afternoon, Claire drafted a complaint to the Trenton County Property Compliance Division, attaching her full evidence set. Within an hour, she received a call from a calm-voiced investigator named Rachel Kim. Mrs. Thompson, I've reviewed your attachments. This could constitute falsification of association records. We'll need to interview both parties. When? Monday morning here at the county office. Neutral ground. Will the HO chair be notified? Yes, along with any directly involved applicants. That includes your mother-in-law. Claire allowed herself a slow exhale. Good. That weekend was eerily quiet. Judith no longer spoke at meals, only offered clipped nods. Mark tried to fill the silence. Maybe the meeting was just delayed, not cancelled, he said once, as if reasoning with himself. It was suspended, Claire corrected. There's a difference. He looked at her, torn between love and discomfort. Do you have to keep fighting? Claire's voice softened. Mark, this isn't a fight. It's self-defense. Sunday night, Lily knocked gently on her mother's door. Mom? Grandma's packing. Claire looked up from her laptop. Packing what? Her suitcase. And the box from the shed. Claire's pulse spiked. She rose and walked quietly down the hall. Judith's door was open. Inside, the old woman was folding cardigans into a neat pile, the box of documents open beside her. Going somewhere? Claire asked evenly. Judith didn't turn around. I thought it best to remove myself from your hostility. Claire stepped closer. Before or after the county interview tomorrow? That made Judith pause. Slowly she turned. You reported me? I documented you, Claire said. Reporting happens when people break rules. Judith's eyes flared. You think you've won because of some flour stains and recycled parchment? I think I've won because you can't stop leaving fingerprints, even in the kitchen. Judith's nostrils flared. Mark won't forgive you for this. Claire met her gaze steadily. Mark doesn't have to. He just has to see. The next morning, the county building's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Rachel Kim guided them to a small conference room. Judith sat stiffly in her lavender cardigan, hands folded. Mrs. Delaney arrived 10 minutes late, face pale but composed. Rachel opened a folder. We're here to address discrepancies in HOA filings related to the Thompson residence. Mrs. Delaney, you were the officiating chair. Yes, Faye said faintly. Mrs. Thompson, Rachel turned to Judith. Did you or anyone acting on your behalf submit amended forms after the HOA hearing was suspended? Judith's lips twitched. Not to my knowledge. Rachel slid a clear sleeve across the table. Inside was the photographed parchment paper. Do you recognize this? Judith blinked. It's baking paper? With the imprint of your own document underneath it, Rachel said coolly. Stamped by Mrs. Delaney. The chairwoman's mouth opened slightly. I didn't. Those were just drafts. They were dated and stamped, Rachel said. And they appear to have been repurposed in domestic use to conceal disposal. That's deliberate destruction of record integrity. The silence that followed was devastating. Claire spoke softly. I only baked banana bread once in this house, and it wasn't last week. Judith's cheeks flushed. You're framing me. Rachel raised a hand. Please, Mrs. Thompson. The evidence is self-documenting. By the end of the interview, Rachel announced that both Judith and Mrs. Delaney were under formal review for fraudulent filing. The county clerk's office would audit all HOA residency adjustments processed by Delaney in the past year. Outside the building, the winter air bit sharp and clean. Judith walked ahead, head bowed, while Faye trailed silently to her car. Mark stared at Claire, disbelief etched into his face. I can't believe this. I can't believe Mom. Claire touched his arm gently. You don't have to pick a side. Just believe the truth. He nodded slowly. I do now. That night, as the family sat down for dinner, Judith's seat at the table remained empty. Her suitcase waited by the front door. Lily watched quietly as her father reached for his fork, eyes wet. She's leaving tomorrow, Claire said softly. She needs to face this on her own. Mark nodded, tears threatening. Maybe we all need to start over. The chipped mug sat between them on the table, filled with cooling tea. A small, imperfect symbol of endurance. The audit hearings for the HOA scandal were set for Thursday evening, held at the same community hall where Judith had once stood, proud and untouchable. Now her name was the subject of every whispered conversation, her banana bread diplomacy replaced by wary silence. Claire didn't want triumph. She wanted closure. Still, she arrived early, binder in hand, everything labeled. Fraudulent drafts, affidavit, banana bread evidence, audit summary. It felt like carrying the last year of her life in paper form. Mark sat beside her, his jaw tight, guilt and resolve battling behind his eyes. You sure you want to do this publicly? He murmured. I didn't make it public, Claire said softly. She did. At precisely 6 o'clock, the county compliance officer, Rachel Kim, stepped forward. We've concluded our investigation into the fraudulent filings submitted through the Trenton Meadows HOA, she began. Tonight we'll review findings and sanctions. Judith sat at the end of the table, immaculate as ever, wearing a navy dress and pearls. Her calm was practiced, but her hands trembled as she clasped them on her lap. Faye Delaney beside her looked broken, shoulders hunched, mascara faintly smudged. Rachel's assistant passed out printed summaries. For transparency, the following points will be read into the public record, she said. Claire's throat tightened. Here it came. Finding 1. Multiple HOA residency forms were altered after submission without the homeowner's consent. Finding 2. One notary statement was pre-stamped without a present signatory. Finding 3. Correspondence between the HOA chair and applicant suggested intent to formalize co-residency prior to homeowner awareness. Finding 4. Subsequent concealment of draft paperwork was attempted through non-standard disposal, specifically destruction by repurposing into food preparation materials. Laughter rippled softly through the audience at that last line. Judith's face went crimson. Rachel continued evenly. Given these findings, both Mrs. Judith Thompson and Mrs. Faye Delaney are subject to formal censure. The county clerk's office will revoke processing privileges for Mrs. Delaney and impose a property claim restriction on Mrs. Thompson for a minimum of 5 years. What does that mean? Someone in the back asked. It means, Rachel said, Mrs. Thompson is barred from registering as co-resident or caretaker on any property not legally owned by her. Mark exhaled audibly, the sound half relief, half despair. Judith turned toward him, voice cracking. You're really going to let them humiliate me like this? He stared back, tears glinting. You did this, Mom. Judith rose suddenly. I was trying to protect my son. You married a woman who doesn't understand family. You let her take over everything. Claire remained seated, her tone calm and deliberate. Protecting your son doesn't mean erasing his wife. Judith's chest heaved. You've poisoned him against me. I didn't need to, Claire said quietly. You did that yourself. Rachel interjected firmly. Mrs. Thompson, please. Judith sat down again, shoulders rigid. For a moment she looked not furious but frightened, like someone who'd finally run out of rehearsed lines. As the hearing closed, Rachel handed Claire a thin envelope. Official copy of the resolution. Keep it on file. Thank you, Claire said. Outside, the evening sky burned pink over the roofs of Oakbridge Lane. Reporters had gathered, small-town press chasing scandal. One called out, Mrs. Thompson, any comment? Judith pushed past them without a word, pearls glinting like tiny shields. That night, the house felt heavier, quieter. Mark sat in the living room, staring at his hands. I can't believe it came to this, he said softly. It was always heading here, Claire said. You just didn't want to see it. She's still my mom, he whispered. I know, she said gently. And you're still my husband. That's why we survived this. He looked at her then, truly looked, and for the first time in months, his eyes weren't defensive, they were apologetic. I should have believed you sooner. Claire smiled faintly. You see it now. That's enough. Lily patted down the hallway, sleepy but alert. Is Grandma coming back? Claire knelt beside her daughter. Not to live here, sweetheart. But we'll visit her when things calm down, okay? Lily nodded. She used to tell me I'd understand her one day. Claire kissed her forehead. Understanding isn't the same as agreeing. The next morning, Claire woke to an empty guest room. Judith had left before dawn. On the desk sat a folded note written in looping cursive. "You've won. But houses remember more than paper does. One day you'll see what it costs to be right." Claire read it twice, then placed it in her binder behind the final tab, labeled Aftermath. Later that week, Rachel called with one last update. "The audit expanded," she said. "Turns out Mrs. Delaney approved 8 similar caretaker filings for other seniors. They're all being reversed." "So Judith wasn't her only client," Claire said. "No. But she was the only one who baked the evidence," Rachel replied dryly. They both laughed, weary but satisfied. A month later, spring thawed the last of the snow. Claire stood by the garden shed, the one where Judith had hidden her boxes. She unlocked it and stepped inside, breathing the scent of dry cedar and dust. Most of Judith's files were gone, removed when she left, but one box remained tucked behind an old suitcase. Inside were photo albums and a small brass key wrapped in tissue paper. Attached was a note in that same looping hand. "For Mark's peace, not your victory." Claire turned the key in her hand. It fit nothing she recognized. She kept it anyway, not out of sentimentality but as a reminder that even in defeat, Judith believed control could be held through symbols. She smiled faintly. "Not this time," she murmured. By the time the HOA posted its public statement, clearing Claire of all wrongdoing and dissolving Faye Delaney's tenure, neighbors began dropping by again. Some apologized. Others brought casseroles and awkward smiles. Through it all, Claire stayed gracious. "Thank you," she'd say. "We're just glad the truth came out." Inside, though, she knew justice wasn't about winning. It was about surviving intact.
Spring slid into summer slowly that year, the trees along Oakbridge Lane budding early as if determined to grow past the gossip. Judith's departure left a silence that wasn't empty, it was breathable. The house began to sound like itself again, Lily's laughter, the kettle's whistle, the hum of the dishwasher at night. It took weeks for Claire to realize how tense she'd been living, how she'd learned to measure every footstep for judgment, every comment for traps. Without Judith, the air felt rounder, the rooms brighter. Still, small traces lingered. The brass key Judith had left sat on Claire's desk, next to her binder. Sometimes she'd glance at it, wondering whether Judith meant it as one last power play or a final peace offering. Either way, it stayed locked away, symbolically harmless. Mark began therapy not long after the audit ended. "I need to understand why I let her do that," he told Claire. "Why I believed her version of care was love." Claire smiled gently. "Because she was your mother. We all want our mothers to be right." He nodded, eyes soft. "You never gave up on me." "I wasn't fighting you," she said quietly. "I was fighting for us." Lily seemed to bloom, too. Without her grandmother's whispering presence, she rediscovered lightness. She'd started piano again, filling the house with tentative chords. One afternoon, Claire found her daughter in the kitchen, shaping cookie dough into neat circles. "Can I use Grandma's recipe?" Lily asked. Claire hesitated. "If you like." Lily grinned. "I want to make it right this time." Claire smiled, heart swelling. "Then we'll bake it together." As they worked, Claire caught the faint scent of vanilla and nutmeg, the same comforting smell Judith had once weaponized. This time, though, it carried no manipulation, only memory. When the timer dinged, Lily pulled the tray out proudly. "No hidden messages," she said. "Perfect," Claire replied, meaning more than the cookies. 2 months later, an unexpected envelope arrived, County of Trenton, Notice of Property Compliance Closure. Inside was a formal statement. After full audit and verification, all claims against the property at 14 Oakbridge Lane are dismissed. Homeownership remains exclusively under Claire and Mark Thompson. HA oversight procedures have been amended to prevent future conflicts of interest. Claire folded the letter neatly and slipped it into her binder under the last tab, sealing the story once and for all. That night, Mark came home carrying something behind his back. "Peace offering," he said with a sheepish grin. He set down a small, wrapped box. Inside was a new ceramic mug, deep blue, with a small chip near the rim. The words, "Still Standing," were painted across the side. Claire laughed softly. You didn't. I thought we should start a new collection, he said. Different chip. Different story. She set it beside the old one on the kitchen shelf. Together, the two mugs looked like bookends, one cracked by conflict, the other born from resilience. A week later, a letter arrived from a nursing community in Parma. Judith had apparently checked herself into a small assisted living residence near Margaret Quinn's neighborhood. The message inside was brief, typed rather than handwritten. I won't ask forgiveness, but I will say this. You were steadier than I ever was. Take care of my son and granddaughter. Tell them I'm fine. Claire read it twice, then placed it in the binder, behind the page labeled Aftermath. For the first time, she didn't feel the urge to annotate or archive, just to understand. That evening, she poured tea into both mugs, the old one and the new. She set the chipped one in front of Judith's empty seat, then carried her own to the back porch. Through the open door, she could hear Lily practicing piano, tentative, beautiful, imperfect. The sky was a watercolor wash of lilac and gold. Claire closed her eyes, feeling the breeze roll through the screen door, carrying the sound of music and the faint smell of fresh cookies. Later that night, she wrote one final note on the inside cover of her binder. Truth doesn't shout. It just stays steady until everyone else stops pretending not to hear it. She placed the brass key inside the binder pocket, not as evidence, but as a reminder. Some doors shouldn't be locked forever, but neither should they be left open to trespass again. And with that, she closed it for good.